Welcome to day 42 on the trail. We have 5 readings for today from Luke 23, verses 1 through 25, Exodus 14, verses 1 through 31, the 51st Psalm, Job 16, verse 1 through 17:16, and Sirach chapter 46, verses 1 through 20. We start today in the 51st Psalm. Now, according to the inscription, this psalm is set in the context of the story of David, Bathsheba, and the death of her husband Uriah. We will cover this story in detail later along the trail. But in Psalm 51 today, we see David's plea for repentance based on these events. We hear the cry of his broken and contrite heart, a heart that honestly and painfully assesses the condition of his life and the consequences of his actions. In Psalm 51, David looks at his life and his sin and confesses in verse 5, "Indeed, I was born in iniquity, and my mother conceived me in sin." David feels that his sin is so pervasive that it's actually retroactive. He is so consumed by his sinfulness that he feels that he was never innocent, never clean. This is a heart that does not care who's listening, a heart completely laid bare before God. David knows that it is not what is on the outside that matters most, but what is on the inside, in the deep reaches of his soul. Then, out of this darkness, David finds hope. Beginning in verse 7, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities." From his sorrow, David pleads for mercy before God. He believes that out of the deepest darkness, there is hope. Hope for forgiveness, hope for renewal, hope for a renewed relationship with God. This reminds us of a critically important concept in our understanding of forgiveness. Who does David sin against? Bathsheba? Uriah? The child who dies? Yes, all of them. But can he ask forgiveness from Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, who he sent to his death? Can he plead for forgiveness from the child who died because of his sin? No. But look again at verse 4. David says to God, "Against you, you alone have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence, and blameless when you pass judgment." Our sin is ultimately committed against God. God is the one who is hurt by our sin against his creation. Now, this does not negate what David has done to Bathsheba, Uriah, or his son, but it does provide hope. When we hurt others, even if they might not forgive us, or as in the case of this story, cannot forgive us, there is still hope for forgiveness. Since we all belong to God, every act of pain that we cause on the earth is also committed against God, who created the earth and everything in it. Therefore, God can also forgive all. And since God creates everything, he can also create something new in us. And that is where David places his hope. He wants God to create something new in him. David really doesn't ask to avoid punishment. He asks God to make him new, to create a new, pure heart in him, to make him useful again. You see, Psalm 51 is not just about sin, punishment, or even repentance. It is also about hope for forgiveness and a new future. Turning to Exodus chapter 14, I want to look at the moment when Pharaoh's army shows up and traps the Israelites between his army and the sea. In verse 10, we read, "As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there were the Egyptians advancing on them. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord." They are trapped, pinned between Pharaoh's army and the sea. In that moment, their boldness melts to fear. Instead of focusing on the pillar that was in front of them, or the powerful plagues that God sent upon the Egyptians, or even that God told them what he was about to do before he did it, they focused their attention on the Egyptian army. They cry out to Moses, "Why did you bring us here? It would have been better for us to stay slaves in Egypt." So if you're picturing the scene, don't forget that they are carrying much of Egypt's wealth with them, and the pillar of fire and smoke is right there in front of them. Standing on the shores of the Red Sea, I think we see something that God is after from his people. When push comes to shove, when life-defining challenges arise, where will we turn? Will we run back to captivity? Will we turn back to our slavery, to what is familiar and comfortable? Or will we run toward God? Because when you're trapped between an army and the sea, you have to move in some direction. This is a pretty basic question for all of us. Is our default to run toward God or to run away from our problems? Are we running toward God or running away from our fears? Because those are two very different directions. Honestly, it's hard to know what we would do in that situation. How will you and I react when paralyzing fear rises up inside of us? When we feel trapped with no way out? Well, allow me to offer a bit of advice. Don't wait to find out. Don't wait for the army to show up to see what happens. Start running toward God now. Work to make turning and running to God our default response. Instead of focusing on what we are running away from, turn your focus to what you're running toward. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.